Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
The city says Heaven's Gate awaiting.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with another edition of Kenzie's Krimes, a deep dive into a local murder mystery drama. And myself and Case do not know what story Kenzie's about to tell us. We just sit back like you and get the popcorn ready, and Kenzie, tell us a story.
So 35-year-old Helen Cardwell lived in Chicago in 1992, and she moved to this beautiful city from New Jersey, and she was really ready to start kind of a new life, right? She moved to a new city, and she was going to start a brand new job at Lutheran General Hospital. We all have that, like, we're in our younger years, starting anew, really exciting. She had moved into the Leaning Tower YMCA building in Niles, Illinois. I feel like Case may not recognize that, but Brian, you would recognize that, right?
I do. In fact, and I always wanted to live there because the name, it's just awesome. The Leaning Tower, but I never got out there. Never did.
I have to be honest, until I did this story, you know how you mishear a name for years? I always thought it was called the Learning Tower, which I thought was weird. And then I'm reading this story like in print, and I'm like, oh, leaning.
I got the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy and the Leaning Tower in Niles. Kenzie thought it was Hogwarts.
I know. Well, I would have moved right in. So she moved in to the Leaning Tower YMCA building that we all know in Niles, Illinois. And her sister and her husband would come to visit once a week, which was really nice. So on November 8th, her sister and her brother-in-law, right, her sister's husband, went to go visit her as they always did. However, upon entering her room, instead of getting to visit with Helen, they found her body. She was no longer alive, and she had been strangled with a sweater.
Oh.
Horrific thing to walk in on, right? DNA left on her body was collected, and investigators started following potential leads, interviewing people in the building, looking for security footage, things like that. The case, unfortunately, went cold in 1993 with a lack of investigative leads. I mean, she was a super sweet girl. She was going to work in the hospital, new to the city, not really an opportunity to have bad blood when it comes to friendships, getting into trouble, no breakup, like jealous boyfriend because you're new to a city. She was in the business of helping people. It just didn't really make sense. It seemed like such a random attack, which is, obviously so sad, and they were having a really hard time following up. Again, this is happening in 1992, so it's good to remember that they didn't have cameras the same way that they do now to get like digital pings and things. So it made it really, really hard to solve without any potential motive. Until 2020, nearly 30 years later, officers had a break with DNA. And I'm going to pause right here because I love when justice is served. People think they're going to get away with something. Technology, baby, it advanced.
Yeah, DNA snaps fingers like that. You ain't getting away. All right, when we come back in 3 minutes, the conclusion of Kenzie's Krimes here with Brian and Kenzie on Q101. Also coming up after the conclusion of Kenzie's Krimes, after Panic at the Disco, we will get to 8:30, so that means a new keyword for you, a new golden ticket opportunity. If you already entered this hour, don't worry. You can do it again and again and again every hour, so it's coming up.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with the conclusion to Kenzie's Krimes. And Kenzie, why don't you catch us up on where we started with this just a few minutes ago?
Yes, if you are just joining us, don't worry, you'll still be caught up. Helen Cardwell was 35, and she moved to Chicago in 1992 from New Jersey and was starting her new life. She was going to work at Lutheran General Hospital. She moved into the Leaning Tower YMCA building in Niles, Illinois. Unfortunately and tragically, her sister and brother-in-law walked in and found her dead body November 8th. The case went cold in 1993 because there was just no leads. There was just no reason for it. But 2020, nearly 30 years later, officers had a break with DNA. In late 2020, investigators reopened the case. They submitted the DNA that had been collected nearly 30 years ago, and they received a match. 72-year-old Richard Sisto had been living and working in Niles, like in that area near the time of Helen Cardwell's slaying.
Wow.
He was on parole for a 1977 aggravated SA conviction out of Dallas, Texas. So living in the area, a history of these crimes. Officers had trouble locating him after the DNA match in 2020. According to officers, he had gone completely off the radar and was living in the dark, nowhere to be found. But then in August of 2021, police database research revealed that he was actually in a jail in Texas because of a 2006 parole violation warrant. So, okay, not a great guy. We obviously have the 1977 SA conviction. Then we have the 2006 parole violation. And now we know he was guilty of this crime in 1992. So Cook County detectives traveled to Texas and they took another DNA sample upon arrival and interviewed him. The second DNA confirmed 100% he was the killer. Richard Sisto was brought back to Illinois to face the charges against him. He was, for the most part, at the Stroger Hospital receiving treatment. He was an elderly man. January 26, 2022, and now 73-year-old Richard Sisto died while awaiting trial. Helen's sister Noka lived long enough to see her sister's killer found, and I'm happy he was exposed as a monster before his death to the world. He did not get to get away with that. What I want to highlight is if you see anything, report it. It can make such a difference for, these cases. This went unsolved for nearly 30 years. And I know somebody saw, that man leave the building at one point, right? I also would like to highlight there are lots of foundations to help cold cases. There's so many people waiting out there for their DNA to be retested with the current technology. So if this is something you're passionate about, there are a lot of foundations that do help with that.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
C says Heaven's Gate away team.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.